Hey everybody, Everyman Prepping here with you, and we're going to talk about the Supreme Court's decision yesterday to allow the Border Patrol to go back to the Texas border, remove the razor wire that the governor and the National Guard of Texas put up to protect Texan citizens and their property from the migration that's coming across. Court sided with the administration, saying this really didn't allow the border agents to do their job. Now, how does the governor react? How does Texas react? What do they do? Is there any thoughts of leaving the country? We're going to go through all those, some pluses, minuses, what could happen, and talk about all that. So let's get into that really quick. I'm going to start with an article right here. Please, everybody, also like the video, comment on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. But it says here, the Supreme Court allows the Border Patrol agents to remove the razor wire. It was argued that Texas was preventing the agents from carrying out their duties. The Biden administration said the wire prevented agents from reaching the migrants who have already crossed the border into the U.S. So they're saying, the wire was put inside the border, not right on the border, so they were already crossed the border, and this wire and the National Guard was preventing the border agents from doing their job. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, that's right, so you can't prevent the border agents from doing their job, no matter what the impact is on the state of Texas. It was a 5-4 vote. In theory, based on who's been added to the Supreme Court in the Trump administration, should have been a 6-3 conservative liberal, but that never happens, never does, because, well, Supreme Court is not what it should be. Let's put it that way. Anyway, going on from there, we have Greg Abbott, and how did he respond this morning? Well, he put this out on his X post. He said, "This is not over. Texas razor wire is an effective deterrent to the illegal crossing Biden encourages. I will continue to defend Texas' constitutional authority to secure the border and prevent the Biden administration from destroying our property." And you can see what is trending here when I made this video. I think it is still trending right now. You can check, but that right there is trending. Along with that, and let's check out this border on this map really quick. So the Eagle Pass is this red balloon here. Of course, we have Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California over here to the side. And as you can see, now the Texas border, it is the closest border to Mexico. So you may be thinking, well, that's why so many crossings are happening there. I countered that with the thought that, well, why isn't San Diego flooded? It's warm, great climate. Why isn't San Diego flooded? Yes, it's further away from most of Mexico, but California is already a deep blue state. Arizona, they got a lot of crossing through Nogales still. They got a lot going through there. And, they've almost turned that into a blue state, so that's why you get more there. New Mexico's already lost to the blue realm, and so that's why you don't hear Mexico complaining. But you see Texas, if you're trying to convert a red state, turn it into a blue state, you need, people that might vote for the blue side, let's say, which also, feed into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and so forth. So that's why you see Texas getting just inundated. And like I said, this is the Eagle Pass crossover right here. And that's where the National Guard, went to go try to stop this, put out the razor wire. And in fact, they were very effective. I mean, the National Guard went in there, and 2 or 3 nights, they went to 3 crossings. They put the National Guard, they put the razor wire up, and what do you know? Crossing stopped. Amazing what you can do if you really want to. So it was being too effective. So that's why, went to the Supreme Court. The Biden administration took them there and said, oh, can't let that happen. We got to let the Border Patrol in there. So that was his decision. Now what happens? What does Texas do? Well, this is a states' rights issue. The way our Constitution is set up is the federal government is in charge of certain things, and whatever they don't do, the states have the right to do it. This is states' decisions. So the federal government, they handle interstate commerce, interstate travel, so there's no, so states don't put up their own borders. Money, we have one money system, so there's not 50 different types of money. Every state doesn't have their own money. But most important, there's a few other things, but one most important thing they do is protect the country, protect it from outside nations, protect the borders, have a military, all that. Well, they're not doing such a hot job in protecting the borders, and so that's why, it fell to the state. And the state of Texas took it upon themselves to say, well, we're going to protect our own state, put up razor wire, put the National Guard there, and take it under states' rights. Well, the Supreme Court basically said, no, that's not a state right. And if this stands, and if the governor, he says it's not over, and if they don't push back and it stands, then, well, what else do the federal government come after, right? What other state rights do they take? There's state police now. Does it now become federal police? State courts, is it just all federal court now? Think about all the things that the state runs. that are considered a constitutional state right, including the state National Guard, right? All those troops. Maybe the federal government tries to go into and say, we're going to nationalize all that now because, well, for security, for safety, we're going to do it just like for the border. So that's why this is a huge issue. States are going to lose their rights if they don't stand up for them. So hopefully Texas stands up and we see what happens. Now, what could they do? Could they, what happens? Now, I'm just spitballing here, so put in the comments below what you think. But what happens if they just say no or they ignore it? They don't let the Border Patrol in there. Then we have a standoff between the Border Patrol and the State National Guard. What do they call more feds in? Do they call in the FBI, the CIA, the DEA? I don't know. They call more in there to back them up, and then we have a standoff. You remember what happened in Nevada with the Brady Ranch or the Bundy Ranch? Where the government was going to go in there to take over a ranch, and then you had a bunch of the Nevada National Guard, citizen soldiers show up, and the federal government backed down for at least a while. Then something happened afterwards, but they did back them down. So do a lot of the Texan militias, the Texan citizens, do they go down there and show up to support their state? Then we have a bigger standoff. And then what happens? Are we one, good old boy trigger pull away from a war happening? Because someone pulls the trigger and then, people shoot from all sides. I don't know. Does the U.S. government just say, Texas, all right, we're going to let you go? Maybe just Texas want to be independent, be on its own. There's a lot of talk in the past about Texas wanting to be its own country. They have their own, electrical system already. They are considered, what I wrote down here, what I looked up, they're the 8th largest economy in the world. So yes, they could survive on their own. A lot of progressives, Democrats say, well, just let them go. We don't need Texas. The federal government gives them more money. They're just a drain on the country. I don't believe that at all. I think Texas would be fine. And even though there's a lot of, they get a lot of trade from other states, obviously, and, people, in that group say, well, Texas will suffer. Really? Is Russia suffering right now? NATO and the United States, everybody put those sanctions on Russia, and they're probably stronger than they were. And you know what? The EU is still buying natural gas, oil, other commodities. Heck, the United States is still buying Russian uranium. So, and they're, we're supposed to be at war with Russia, right? But we're still buying stuff, still doing trade, and that's what will happen with Texas. Even if they became their own state, there's still going to be trade going back and forth. Like I said, they have their own electrical grid. They have ports, the Gulf of Mexico, so they can ship stuff out. They ship a ton of oil. There's a lot of oil over there. There's all kinds of other stuff inside of Texas. So, yes, they could definitely stand alone. Now, if it was a peaceful separation, and they said, okay, Texas go your way, United States can go our way, are the other states going to join in? I think they would. I think there's a lot of other red states that would say, this is our chance. We're going to, follow your lead, and we're going to come with you. But I think there has to be that initial state that goes, to do it. Now, if it was a more of a Civil War type nature where, Texas says we're leaving, the U.S. says not, that's a whole other issue. And predictive programming wise, there's that movie coming out in April about, the American Civil War Part 2, right? Very interesting on that point. So we got to really see what's going to go on here. The other thing you got to think about is there are a lot of military bases inside of Texas. The third largest Army base, the Fort Hood, is in there. Now, let me get this off my chest. I was stationed in Fort Hood. It's always going to be Fort Hood to me. I know last year they changed it to Fort Cavazos. Cavazos, I think you pronounce it. Cavazos. They renamed it because after the riots a couple years ago, Fort Hood was named after a Confederate general, so they decided to name it after a Hispanic general from Texas. They did that to a few other ones, but to me it's always Fort Hood. But I'm going off a tangent. So anyway, Fort Hood's there. It's got the first Cav Division, some 88, a bunch of other troops there. You got Fort Bliss also out there. You got tons of Air Force bases. You got all kinds of stuff. So those are all federal. So if Texas wants to go its own way, even if it's peaceful, does the federal government just abandon all that and leave those places for the Texas to take over? Do some of those troops, some of those soldiers, some of those units decide to side with Texas and stay there? A lot of issues with that. It's not as cut and dry because there's a lot of military in Texas. So you got to figure out what's going to happen with that military. So that's another, link in this chain before it gets broken as to what's going to happen there. But this is going to be a very interesting time. We need to really watch and see what's going to go on with Texas and the governor and what they decide. If they bow down and just say, okay, we tried, the Supreme Court said, can't do it, do whatever, unfettered crossings now, unload it, then I think it's over for Texas and probably for the rest of the country. As for the amount of immigration, number of people coming in, it'll just be out of control. And then the federal government will use this as an excuse to go other state rights, like I mentioned earlier. If Texas stands up and says no, well, we don't care what they said. We consulted our own legal scholars that said the Supreme Court, has took away states' rights, which is on the Constitution. We're gonna, defend our state because it's our right, and we're gonna keep doing it. Try to make us leave. Then we'll have to see what happens after that. But very interesting times. I know there's a lot going on in the world, but this here for us Americans here is very important to see what happens in Texas. I got a buddy living out there. I'm gonna try to keep up with him as much as possible about what he's hearing on the state level, inside the state. The sense of the people, and I'll relay that to you guys just to see what the sense of the the common citizen is over there and what they think. So, well, let's hope this turns out without I don't want to say bloodshed, without bad stuff happening, but I don't know where this is going to go. I hope it's not a back down, because then I fear for state rights throughout the country, especially in the policing and the courts and a lot of other state rights. But we shall see. If you want to add anything below, please feel free to do so. Your comments on this, what do you think will happen? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Any of that stuff. And until next time, keep your ear to the ground, head on a swivel.